The sky above Kelrath Prime burned red. Scholar diplomat Thessir pressed her long fingers against the window of the observation tower and watched her world die. Below, the cities glowed with fire. The protective shields that had protected her people for 300 years flickered like dying stars. They would fail soon. Maybe in hours, maybe in minutes. Thessir was old by her people's standards. She had lived for 217 years. She had seen the birth of 3 new colonies. She had walked on worlds where her people planted their first gardens under alien suns. She had written 12 books about peace and understanding between different species. Now she would watch it all end. The enemy called themselves the Vakar Swarm. They did not talk. They did not negotiate. They simply came and consumed. World after world fell before them. The Vakar were a hive mind, billions of creatures controlled by one terrible intelligence. They ate everything, plants, animals, buildings, even the soil itself. They left behind only dead rock. The Kelrath had tried to fight. Their ships were beautiful things, built for exploring the stars and carrying scholars to distant universities. They had never been meant for war. The Kelrath were not warriors. They were artists and mathematicians. They wrote poetry and solved equations that described the dance of galaxies. Their bodies were delicate, made of silicon compounds that sparkled faintly in sunlight. A fall from even a small height could shatter their limbs. Violence was something they had read about in history books, a mistake their ancestors had abandoned thousands of years ago. Against the Vakar, they had lasted 3 days. Thessir turned away from the window. The command center was nearly empty now. Most of the staff had left to be with their families, to hold their children one last time, to say goodbye. Only a few technicians remained, their crystalline faces reflecting the red glow of warning lights. She walked to the communications console. Her hands shook as she activated it. The Galactic Council had promised help. They had promised ships and soldiers. But the Council moved slowly. They debated and formed committees while worlds burned. The nearest Council fleet was 6 days away. Kelrath Prime had perhaps 6 hours. Thessir made a decision. She would send one final message. Not to the Council. They would arrive too late to find anything but ruins. Instead, she would send it everywhere. Into the deep dark between stars. Perhaps someday someone would find it. Perhaps they would remember that the Kelrath had existed. That they had loved beauty and knowledge. That they had mattered. Her fingers moved across the controls. She poured everything into the transmission. The history of her people, their art, their music, their greatest mathematical theorems, the names of their heroes and the words of their poets. She included star charts showing their worlds, images of their cities before the fire, recordings of their children singing, and finally she added a simple message in the common trade language that most spacefaring species understood. "Help us, please, we are dying. Remember us," she pressed send. The message burst outward in all directions, carried by powerful transmitters that reached across light years. It would travel for centuries, growing weaker but never truly fading. Somewhere, someone might hear it. The building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The shields had failed. Thessir heard explosions in the distance. The Vakar were landing. She had perhaps an hour before they reached this tower. She sat down at her desk. She would spend her final minutes doing what she had always done. She would write. Her hands moved across a datapad, recording her final observations. The temperature in the room, the smell of smoke from the burning city, the way her hearts beat faster with fear. She wrote it all down with the careful precision of a scholar who had spent 2 centuries studying the universe. A technician's voice broke the silence. His name was Varys. He was young, barely 40 years old. His voice shook with fear and something else. Confusion. Scholar Thessir. The sensors. They show something strange. Thessir looked up. What is it? Ships, many ships. They just appeared at the edge of the system. They are not Vakar. They are not council vessels either. Thessir felt her heart skip. Pirates? Scavengers come to pick through the ruins? Varys worked his controls, his fingers moving fast. No. These ships are huge. Battle cruisers, carriers. They are moving toward us, fast. They are broadcasting a signal. Thessir stood. Her legs felt weak. Play it, the speakers crackled. Then a voice came through. It was rough, speaking the trade language with a strange accent. The words were simple and direct. Kelrath Prime, this is Admiral Chen of the United Humanity Star Vessel Indomitable. We received your distress call. Hold on. The cavalry's here. Thessir stared at the speaker. Humanity. She knew that name. Every species in the galaxy knew that name. They were the Deathworlders, the ones who came from a planet so violent that it killed most things that tried to live there. A world with crushing gravity and terrible storms and creatures that hunted each other with claws and teeth. The Galactic Council feared them. They were short-lived compared to most species, burning bright and dying young. But while they lived, they were unstoppable. They fought wars that other species could barely imagine. They called it courage. Other species called it madness, and now they were here. Ferris turned to her. His voice was barely a whisper. "What have we summoned?" Thesser watched the sensor display. The human fleet was massive. 47 warships, each one larger than anything the Kelrath had ever built. They moved with purpose, cutting through space toward Kelrath Prime. Between them and the planet stood the Vakar swarm. Hundreds of Vakar ships, each one covered with weapons and armor made from consumed worlds. The humans did not slow down. They did not try to talk. They simply accelerated, their engines burning bright as stars. Thesser realized she was holding her breath. Around her, the few remaining Kelrath had gathered, watching the displays. None of them spoke. They simply watched as the human fleet crashed into the Vakar swarm like a hammer striking glass. The battle had begun. And for the first time in 3 days, Thesser felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the tactical display. The Vakar swarm filled the screen like a disease. Their ships were ugly things, covered with spikes and weapons. They had been built from the materials of 100 dead worlds. Each ship was a graveyard. Chen was 52 years old. He had gray in his hair and scars on his hands from a dozen battles. He had served in the human fleet for 30 years. He had seen things that would break most people. But he was still here, still fighting because someone had to. His second-in-command, Commander Sarah Okafor, stood beside him. She was younger, faster, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She studied the display and frowned. "They outnumber us 4-1, sir." Chen smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Only 4-1? I've faced worse. Remember New Avalon?" Okafor nodded slowly. "That was 8-1. We lost 30,000 people. But we won," Chen said quietly, "and we'll win this too. Open a channel to all ships." The communications officer's hands moved across her console. "Channel open, sir." Chen took a breath. He thought about the message they had received. The desperate plea from a dying world. He thought about the recordings they had heard. Kelrath children singing, scholars reading poetry, a civilization that had spent thousands of years building something beautiful, now watching it burn. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen." 3 days ago, the Kelrath sent a message into the dark. They asked for help. They asked for someone to remember them. Well, we heard them, and we're here to make sure they survive to tell their own story. He paused. On the display, he could see his fleet. 47 ships. Not enough. Never enough. But it was what they had. The Vakar don't negotiate. They don't surrender. They just consume. So we're going to teach them something new. We're going to teach them fear. All ships engage at will. Show them what happens when they threaten the innocent. The channel closed. Around him, the bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had done this before. Too many times. But they did it anyway because that was what humans did. They stood between the innocent and the dark. Chen thought back to his first day at the Naval Academy. His instructor, an old woman named Rivera with metal legs from an old war, had told them something he never forgot. "You come from Earth," she had said. "Do you know what that means? It means your ancestors survived everything. Ice ages, droughts, predators with teeth as long as your arm. Diseases that killed millions. Asteroid strikes, wars. Everything the universe could throw at humanity, and we're still here. That's in your blood. That's in your bones. You are the children of survivors. Act like it, Earth." Chen had not been home in 5 years. He missed it sometimes. The smell of rain. The sound of wind through trees. The weight of real gravity. Heavier than most species could endure. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. There were only 3 others known in the entire galaxy. Planets where everything was trying to kill you. Where the weather itself was a weapon. Where life survived only by being harder, faster, and meaner than anything else. Humans had evolved as pursuit predators. They chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They hunted in packs and used tools and never ever gave up. Other species in the galaxy had evolved from prey animals. They were faster or had better camouflage or could hide in trees. But humans just kept coming. The Galactic Council had been terrified when they first met humanity. They had tried to keep humans contained, restricted to a few systems, but humans were explorers. They spread out anyway, building colonies on worlds other species considered uninhabitable. They took jobs no one else wanted, mining asteroids in radiation zones, fixing satellites near black holes, fighting pirates in the lawless regions. Eventually, the Council accepted reality.
Humanity was here to stay.
And when the wars came, as they always did, the Council learned something else. Humans made terrible enemies but excellent allies. "Sir, the Vakar are moving to intercept," Okafor reported. "They're forming a defensive wall," Chen nodded. "Good. That means they're worried. Helm, take us through their center." "Full speed." The helmsman's eyes widened. "Sir, through their center?" "You heard me. The Vakar expect us to fight like the Council. Long-range weapons. Careful maneuvering. Formation flying. But we're not the Council. We're human, and humans don't do careful." The Indomitable surged forward. Around it, the human fleet followed. They accelerated to speeds that would have torn apart ships built by other species. But human ships were built strong. They had to be. They were designed to operate in Earth's orbit, where gravity pulled harder than anywhere else most species had ever seen. The Vakar opened fire. Energy weapons and missiles filled the space between the fleets. The Indomitable's shields flared as impacts hammered against them. Warning lights lit up across the bridge. "Shields at 70%, a technician called out. "Hold course," Chen ordered. "Return fire." All weapons, the Indomitable's guns spoke. Railguns that used magnetic fields to throw slugs of metal at a fraction of the speed of light. Missiles with fusion warheads. Laser arrays that could cut through armor like paper. The human fleet had learned from centuries of warfare. They had learned what worked and what didn't. And they had built weapons that other species thought were insane. A Vakar cruiser exploded. Then another. The human fleet punched through the Vakar line like it wasn't there. They were inside the swarm's formation now, surrounded by enemies. Any other fleet would have been destroyed in seconds, but humans trained for this. They called it close-quarters combat, fighting at ranges where you could see your enemy's hull, where skill mattered more than numbers, where courage was the difference between life and death. "Sir, the destroyer Defiant is requesting permission to board a Vakar hive ship," Okafor reported. Chen glanced at the display. The Defiant was alongside a massive Vakar vessel. He could see the boarding pods launching already. Marines in powered armor shooting across the gap between ships. "Permission granted," he said. "Tell them to plant charges on the reactor and get out." 5 minutes, no more. Okafor relayed the orders. She looked at Chen with something like awe. "Boarding actions. Most species don't even have words for that. Most species are smarter than us," Chen said. "But we're here anyway." The battle raged for hours. The human fleet fought with a ferocity that shocked even Chen, and he had seen humanity at war before. They rammed Vakar ships when their weapons ran dry. They set off fusion reactors as bombs. They fought with every trick and tactic they had learned in 1,000 years of warfare. And slowly, impossibly, they won. "Sir, the Vakar are retreating," Okafor said. Her voice was tired but triumphant. "They're pulling back." Chen looked at the display. She was right. The Vakar ships were turning away, fleeing into deep space. For the first time in their history, the swarm had been beaten. "Get me casualty reports," he said quietly. The numbers came in. 8 ships destroyed, thousands dead, more wounded. Chen felt the weight of each name. He would read them all later. He would remember them. That was his duty as their commander. But Kelrath Prime still lived. The mission was a success. And below, on the planet's surface, millions of Kelrath were alive because humans had heard their call. "Open a channel to Kelrath Prime," Chen ordered. The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Chen cleared his throat. "Kelrath Prime, this is Admiral Chen. The Vakar have been driven off. Your world is safe. We'll maintain orbit and help with repairs. You're not alone anymore." There was a long pause. Then a voice came back. It was soft and musical, speaking carefully in the trade language. "This is Scholar Diplomat Thesser. We received your message, Admiral."
"We don't know how to thank you."
"You saved us," Chen smiled. It was a real smile this time, tired but genuine. "You called for help, Scholar." We answered. "That's what neighbors do. We'll talk more soon." Chen out, he turned to Okafor. Send a message to Earth. Tell them we need repair ships and medical supplies. And tell them the Kelrath are under human protection now. Anyone who wants to hurt them will have to go through us. OK4 nodded and moved to relay the orders. Chen looked out at the stars and thought about the long road that had brought humanity here. From caves and stone tools to starships and energy weapons. From hunting animals on the African plains to protecting alien civilizations among the stars. They were still the same species. Still pursued predators who never gave up. Still pack hunters who protected their own. But now their pack included everyone who needed help. Everyone who called out in the dark and hoped someone would answer. And humanity would always answer. The space above Kelrath Prime was filled with debris. Pieces of Vikar ships drifted in the dark, slowly falling toward the planet below. Human vessels moved between them, searching for survivors and securing the area. Medical ships were already landing on the surface, bringing supplies and doctors to help the wounded. Captain Maria Okonkwo stood in the hangar bay of the destroyer Defiant. Around her, Marines were removing their armor and checking their weapons. They were exhausted. The boarding action had lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of fighting through the corridors of a Vikar hive ship, setting charges on the reactor, then fighting their way back out before it exploded. They had lost 12 people, 12 Marines who would never go home. Maria had known each of them, had trained with them, had shared meals and jokes and stories. Now they were gone, and she had to keep moving, keep fighting, because that was what soldiers did. Lieutenant Torres approached her. He was young, barely 25, with a fresh scar across his cheek from the battle. "Captain, we've been ordered to the surface. The Admiral wants a security team at the government building." Maria nodded. "Get a squad together. Light armor. We're guests, not invaders. Tell them to keep their weapons holstered unless I give the order." Torres saluted and moved away. Maria looked down at her hands. They were still shaking slightly. Combat did that even after all these years. The adrenaline wore off and left you feeling hollow and tired. The shuttle ride down to the surface was quiet. Maria sat with her squad and looked out the window at Kelrath Prime. It was beautiful. 3 small moons hung in the sky. The cities below were made of crystal and metal, glowing faintly in the sunlight. But she could see the damage, too. Entire districts burned to ash, craters where Vikar weapons had struck, refugees fleeing toward the mountains. The shuttle landed on a platform near the government tower. Maria and her squad stepped out into air that smelled like smoke, and something sweet she could not identify. The gravity was lighter than Earth, almost gentle. She had to adjust her steps to avoid bouncing. A group of Kelrath waited for them. They were tall and thin, their bodies made of a crystalline substance that caught the light. Their faces were hard to read, but Maria could see fear in the way they held themselves. They were terrified, of course they were. They had just watched humans fight. Really fight. With a brutality that most species could barely comprehend. The Kelrath had probably never seen violence like that. Their whole civilization was built on peace and understanding. One of the Kelrath stepped forward. She was older, her crystalline body darker with age. She spoke in the trade language, her voice musical but uncertain. "I am Scholar Diplomat Thesser. You must be the security team Admiral Chen mentioned." Maria nodded and tried to make herself look less threatening. She was tall by human standards, with broad shoulders and scars on her arms. She probably looked like a monster to these people. "Captain Maria Okonkwo, we're here to make sure you're safe while the Admiral meets with your leaders." Thesser studied her for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She bowed, her crystalline body bending in a gesture of respect. "Thank you for saving us, Captain. We thought we would all die today." Maria felt something tight in her chest. She returned the bow, awkward but sincere. "We heard you calling for help. We couldn't ignore that." Thesser led them into the tower. The building was damaged but still standing. Inside, the walls were covered with art and mathematical equations written in flowing script. Maria could not read it, but she could tell it was beautiful. These people had spent centuries building this, creating knowledge and beauty, and the Vikar had tried to destroy it all in 3 days. They reached a large room where Admiral Chen was already waiting. He stood with several Kelrath officials, speaking quietly. When he saw Maria, he nodded to her. "Captain Okonkwo." "Good timing. I was just explaining to Scholar Diplomat Thesser why we came." Thesser turned to Maria. Her eyes were like faceted gems, hard to read but somehow sad. "The Admiral says you came because we called for help, but we know about humanity. We know your reputation. The galaxy says you are warriors, dangerous. Why would you risk your lives for strangers? Maria glanced at Chen. He gestured for her to speak. She thought about how to explain it, how to make them understand. You're right, Maria said slowly. We are dangerous. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. We evolved by fighting, by hunting, by never giving up. But that's not all we are. She paused, choosing her words carefully. A long time ago, humanity was almost destroyed. We had just reached the stars when we ran into a species called the Zarthan. They were slavers, pirates. They attacked our colonies and took our people. We were new to space warfare. We didn't know how to fight ships. We were losing badly. Thesir listened intently. What happened? Another species helped us, Chen said, taking over the story. The Taravesh. They were traders, not warriors. But they saw what was happening and they intervened. They taught us how to build better ships, how to fight in space. They lost 3 of their own vessels protecting one of our colonies. They didn't have to do that. We were nothing to them. But they did it anyway. We never forgot that, Maria continued. After we defeated the Zarthan, we made a promise. If we ever heard someone calling for help, we would answer, no matter the cost, no matter the odds, because someone did that for us once. Thesser was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was soft. We did not know this story. The council never told us. They only said that humans were dangerous. We are dangerous, Chen said bluntly. We won't pretend otherwise, but we only use that danger to protect people who can't protect themselves. The strong should defend the weak. That's what we believe. One of the other Kelrath officials spoke up. He was younger, his crystalline body bright and clear. But at what cost? You lost 8 ships. Thousands of your people died for us. Why? What do you want in return? Chen met his gaze steadily. We want you to survive.
To rebuild.
To keep making your art and solving your equations. That's enough. The official looked confused. You want nothing else? No trade agreements? No military bases? No tribute? Nothing, Chen said firmly. Though if you want to share some of your poetry or mathematics with us, we would be honored. Humanity values knowledge and beauty. We may be warriors, but we appreciate civilization when we see it. Thesser made a sound like wind chimes. It might have been laughter. You truly are strange, Admiral Chen. Dangerous and kind at the same time. The galaxy does not know what to make of you. Chen smiled. We don't always know what to make of ourselves. But we do our best. A technician rushed into the room. His crystalline face was dark with worry. Scholar Thesser, Admiral Chen. The long-range sensors are detecting something. The Vekar, they're coming back. The room went silent. Maria felt her hand move instinctively to her weapon. Chen's expression hardened. How many? He asked quietly. The technician's voice shook. 10 times the force we faced before. Maybe more. They're bringing everything. Thesser made a sound like breaking glass. We're doomed. Even with your help, Admiral, we cannot survive this. Chen looked at her. His face was calm, but Maria could see the determination in his eyes. She had seen that look before. It meant he had made a decision that he would not change no matter what. Scholar Thesser, humanity doesn't surrender. And we don't abandon our friends. If the Vekar want you, they'll have to go through every human ship in this system. And I promise you, we'll make them pay for every inch. Maria straightened. Sir, we should get back to our ships. Chen nodded. Agreed. He turned to Thesser. Get your people to the shelters. We're going to buy you as much time as we can. And with luck, reinforcements will arrive before the Vekar do. Thesser bowed deeply. Thank you, Admiral. Thank you, Captain. We will remember this. Always. Maria and her squad followed Chen out of the building. As they walked back to the shuttle, Maria looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, a massive Vekar fleet was coming. More enemies than they could possibly defeat. But they would fight anyway, because that was what humans did. They stood between the innocent and the dark, no matter the odds. They had done it for thousands of years on Earth, fighting predators and diseases and natural disasters. Now they did it among the stars. The shuttle lifted off. Maria watched Kelrath Prime fall away below them. The beautiful crystalline cities. The frightened people seeking shelter. A civilization that had never known real war until now. They would protect them. Whatever it took. That was the human way. The human fleet prepared for war. Ships moved into defensive positions around Kelrath Prime. Engineers worked around the clock to repair damage from the first battle. Medical teams treated the wounded. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew the odds. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and studied the tactical display. His fleet was down to 39 combat-ready ships. The Vekar were bringing at least 400, maybe more. The numbers were impossible. Commander Okafor stood beside him. She had not slept in 30 hours. None of them had. Sir, Earth Command is sending reinforcements, but they won't arrive for at least 48 hours. The Vekar will be here in 6, Chen nodded slowly. Then we hold for 48 hours. Or die trying, sir, Okafor said quietly. We can evacuate the Kelrath, get as many as we can onto transport ships and run. Save some of them at least. Chen shook his head. And abandon their world? Their history? Everything they've built? No, we make our stand here. Besides, where would they go? The Vekar would just hunt them down. Better to end this now. End it how, sir? We can't win this, we don't have to win, Chen said. We just have to make them pay such a terrible price that they never try this again. Send a message to all ships. Tell them to prepare for close combat. Tell them to fight like humans. Okafor's eyes widened. Sir, close combat against those numbers is suicide. Chen smiled grimly. Probably. But the Vekar have never faced an enemy willing to die to stop them. Let's show them what that looks like. And Commander? Send one more message. To Earth High Command. Tell them what we're doing here. Tell them why. Okafor nodded and moved to relay the orders. Chen turned back to the display. He thought about Earth. About the blue oceans and green forest he would never see again. About his daughter, who was 17 and wanted to be a doctor. He had missed her last birthday because of this deployment. He would miss all her future birthdays too. But she would grow up in a galaxy where helping others mattered, where humanity stood for something. That was worth dying for. Down on Kelrath Prime, Thesser sat in her study and watched the stars. The city was quiet now. Everyone was in the shelters waiting, hoping, praying to whatever gods might listen. She had spent the day copying files. Every book, every piece of art, every mathematical proof, every song. She loaded it all onto data drives and gave them to refugees who were being evacuated to the moons. If Kelrath Prime fell, at least something would survive. A young Kelrath named Varus entered the room. He carried 2 cups of warm liquid that glowed faintly blue. Mineral tea, a traditional drink. You should rest, scholar. You've been working for days. Thesser took the cup and sipped. The warm liquid helped calm her nerves. How can I rest? The humans are preparing to die for us. Strangers. They barely know us. Varus sat down across from her. Do you think we would do the same? If we had ships and weapons, would we fight for a species we just met? Thesser considered the question. Honestly, I don't know. We are peaceful people. We avoid violence. We solve problems through discussion and understanding. But the humans? They are different. They see someone in trouble and they run toward it, not away. It's like it's built into them. I watched footage of the first battle, Varus said quietly. The way they fought. It was terrifying, but also beautiful in a strange way. They worked together perfectly, like they were one organism, and they never hesitated. Even when their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. That's because they've been doing it for millions of years, Thesser said. On their world, everything was a threat. The weather, the animals, even the plants were dangerous. They survived by being tougher than everything else, by never giving up. That's in their nature now. Varus was quiet for a moment. If we survive this, we should study them. Really study them. Not just their military tactics, but their philosophy, their culture, why they do what they do. Thesser nodded. Agreed. I think humanity has much to teach us about courage. An alarm sounded, a low, mournful tone that echoed through the city. Thesser's hearts began to race. She looked at Varus. They're here, Varus whispered. In space, the Vekar fleet arrived. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. There were so many ships that they blocked out the stars. Hundreds of vessels, each one bristling with weapons, each one hungry to consume. The human fleet looked tiny in comparison, 39 ships against an armada. But they didn't run. They didn't retreat. They formed a defensive line between the Vekar and Kelrath Prime and waited. Admiral Chen opened a channel to all ships. This is it. This is what we trained for. What we swore an oath for. The Vekar think they can destroy whoever they want. They think the galaxy is too scared to stop them. Today we prove them wrong. He paused. His next words were quiet but fierce. I won't lie to you. Most of us won't survive this, but we'll die doing something that matters. We'll die protecting people who can't protect themselves. And that's more than most people can say, so let's make it count. Let's show the Vikar what happens when they mess with humanity. All ships, engage! The human fleet surged forward. They didn't wait for the Vikar to come to them. They attacked, driving straight into the heart of the enemy formation. It was insane. It was impossible. It was the most human thing they could do. The Vikar opened fire. Space lit up with weapons fire. Energy beams and missiles and projectiles filled the void. The human shields flared and buckled under the assault. Ships took damage. Some exploded. But the rest kept coming. Captain Okonkwo was back on the destroyer Defiant. Her ship shook as Vikar weapons hammered against the shields.
Status report.
Shields at 40%, a technician called out. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 9. We've lost main weapons, Okonkwo gritted her teeth. Switch to secondary weapons, and get me a collision course with that cruiser. If we're going down, we're taking someone with us. The crew stared at her. She glared back. You heard me. Do it. The Defiant turned toward a massive Vikar cruiser. Its engines pushed to maximum. The cruiser tried to turn away, but it was too slow, too big. The Defiant slammed into its side at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire and debris. Okonkwo's last thought was a simple one. Worth it. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships fighting with desperate courage, taking damage, dying, but taking Vikar ships with them. Every human vessel destroyed took out 3 or 4 enemy ships. The Vikar had never faced anything like this. Most species retreated when the odds were bad. Most species valued their lives over the mission. But humans fought harder when things got worse. They became more dangerous when they were dying. On Kelrath Prime, Thesser watched the battle on her datapad. She saw human ships exploding, saw them ramming enemy vessels, saw them fighting to the last bullet. Tears ran down her crystalline face, leaving trails that sparkled in the light. They're dying for us, she whispered. They're all dying for us. Barris put a hand on her shoulder. And we must remember this. Forever. We must tell every Kelrath who ever lives about the humans who gave their lives to save strangers. This is the greatest gift anyone has ever given us. In space, Admiral Chen's ship was barely holding together. Half the crew was dead or wounded. The shields were gone. The hull was breached in a dozen places. But Chen stood on his bridge and kept fighting. Sir, sensors are detecting new ships, a technician reported. Multiple FTL signatures. They're dropping in all around us, Chen closed his eyes. More Vikar, it was over. They had fought well, but it wasn't enough. Identify them. The technician's voice changed. His tone shifted from despair to disbelief. Sir, they're not Vikar. They're broadcasting human identification codes, and council codes, and independent ships. Sir, the whole galaxy just showed up. Chen opened his eyes and looked at the display. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Ships were arriving from every direction. Human reinforcements from Earth. Council warships from a dozen species. Even merchant vessels that had been converted into makeshift warships. Hundreds of ships all broadcasting the same message. We're here to help. Hold on, we're here. Chen felt something in his chest, something he hadn't let himself feel in days. Hope. All ships, he said, his voice hoarse but strong. Welcome to the fight. Let's finish this. The galaxy had answered the call. Ships from 100 worlds arrived to defend Kelrath Prime. Species that had been enemies put aside their differences. Traders abandoned profitable routes. Even pirates showed up, their weapons ready to fight for once on the side of good. The reason was simple. Humanity's stand had shamed them. These short-lived Deathworlders had been willing to die for strangers while the rest of the galaxy watched and did nothing. That couldn't stand. Honor demanded action. The battle changed instantly. The Vikar found themselves surrounded by enemies. Their overwhelming numbers suddenly didn't matter. The combined fleet hit them from every direction. Human ships led the charge, still fighting with that terrifying intensity. But now they had support. Admiral Chen watched his tactical display and allowed himself a small smile. His ship was a wreck. Most of his crew was dead or wounded. But they had held long enough. They had bought the time needed for help to arrive. A transmission came through. This is Council Admiral Tarvesh of the 3rd Fleet. Admiral Chen, your message reached us. We came as fast as we could. Chen recognized that name. Tarvesh. The same species that had helped humanity centuries ago. We appreciate the assist, Admiral. Target the Vakar command ship. If we take out their hive queen, the rest will scatter. Understood. All ships. Concentrate fire on the following coordinates. The combined fleet focused their attack on a massive Vakar vessel at the center of the swarm. It was the size of a small moon covered with weapons and armor. Inside, the hive queen directed her forces, confident in her victory. The Vakar had never lost before. They had consumed 1,000 worlds. They would consume 1,000 more. Then the attack hit. Hundreds of ships fired at once. Energy weapons and missiles and projectiles struck the Queen's ship from every angle. The shields held for a few seconds. Then they collapsed. The hull cracked. Atmosphere vented into space. Chen watched as the Indomitable's final missiles found their target. The Vakar Queen's ship exploded in a flash of light bright enough to be seen from the planet's surface. Immediately, the Vakar fleet stopped fighting. The hive mind was broken. The individual ships turned and fled in all directions, scattering into deep space. Some were destroyed as they ran. Most escaped, but they would never return. They had learned that there were species in the galaxy willing to fight, willing to die to protect others. The battle was over. Kelrath Prime was saved. The cost had been terrible. Of the 39 human ships that had made their stand, only 12 survived. Thousands of humans were dead. The other species had lost ships too. The space around Kelrath Prime was filled with debris and the bodies of the fallen. But below, on the planet's surface, millions of Kelrath were alive. Their world was scarred but intact. Their civilization would survive. 3 weeks later, Thessir stood in front of a monument. It was made of the same crystalline material as the Kelrath themselves, but darker. Black crystal that caught the light and held it inside like stars trapped in stone. Carved into the surface were names. Thousands of names. Every human who had died defending Kelrath Prime. Admiral Chen stood beside her. His arm was in a sling. His face showed the exhaustion of weeks without proper sleep. But he was alive. He had survived when so many others had not. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you." Thessir touched the monument with one delicate hand. "It's not enough. Words carved in stone cannot repay what you gave us, but it's all we have." Chen was quiet for a moment. "We didn't come here expecting payment. We came because you needed help." "I know," Thessir said, "and that is why we will spend the rest of our history telling your story, teaching our children about the humans who heard our call, who came when no one else would, who stood between us and death." She turned to face him. "Before you came, we thought we understood courage. We wrote about it in our books, debated its meaning in our universities, but we had never seen it. Not really. You showed us what it means to be brave, what it means to sacrifice for others." Chen looked uncomfortable with the praise. "We just did what needed to be done, exactly," Thessir said. "You saw people in trouble and you helped. No hesitation. No calculation of profit or cost. You simply helped. That is what makes you different. That is what makes you heroes." Chen sighed. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a soldier doing his job. The real heroes are the ones whose names are on that monument. The ones who didn't come home." Thessir nodded slowly. "We honor them. Every year on the day you arrived, we will hold a ceremony here. We will speak their names and tell their stories. They will never be forgotten." She paused. "And we have made a decision. The Kelrath Council has voted. We wish to join humanity's alliance. We want to learn from you, to become stronger, so that next time we can stand beside you instead of behind you." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? We're not an easy people to be friends with. We're loud and aggressive, and we solve too many problems with violence." Thessir made that wind chime sound again. "Yes, you are all those things, but you are also loyal and brave and kind. You fight for what is right. That is worth more than all the poetry in the galaxy." Chen smiled. "Then we would be honored to call the Kelrath our allies." They stood together in silence for a while, looking at the monument. Around them, the city was being rebuilt. Kelrath workers repaired buildings with help from human engineers. Children played in the streets again, their laughter like crystal bells. Life was returning to normal, but things would never be quite the same. The Kelrath had learned that the universe was more dangerous than they thought. That peace could not always be maintained through discussion and understanding. Sometimes you needed warriors willing to fight, and humanity had learned something too, that their reputation as dangerous Deathworlders could be changed. That other species could see them not just as threats but as protectors. As friends, Chen's communicator buzzed. He checked it and frowned. "Duty calls. There's another distress signal." A mining colony in the Outer Rim is under attack by pirates. Thesser looked concerned. So soon, your ships are damaged. Your crew needs rest, Chen shrugged. Someone needs help. That's enough. We'll manage. Wait, Thesser said. Let us help. We have ships. They are not warships, but we can convert them. We can send supplies and medical aid. You saved us. Now let us help you help others. Chen considered this. Then he nodded. All right. Welcome to the team, Scholar. Let's go save some miners. Thesser felt something she had not expected. Excitement. Purpose. For the first time in her long life, she would be more than a scholar. She would be part of something larger. She would help protect the innocent just as humanity had protected her people. 6 months later, the story of Kelrath Prime had spread across the galaxy. It was told in every port and station, the tale of how humanity heard a desperate call and came running, how they fought impossible odds, how they inspired the galaxy to stand up against evil. Thesser had written it all down. She had interviewed survivors, collected recordings, analyzed battle data, then she had done what Kelrath did best. She had written a book. It was called simply The Deathworlders, and it became the most widely read work in the galaxy. In it, she explained what made humans different, how they evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, how they learned to never give up, how they bonded with anyone who needed help, treating strangers like family, how they believed that the strong should protect the weak, not exploit them. But the final chapter was about something else. It was about how humanity changed the galaxy, how their example inspired other species to be better, to be braver, to help instead of turning away. Thesser ended the book with a simple statement. They are called Deathworlders, and we feared them, but when we cried out in our darkest hour, they came, not as conquerors but as saviors. The galaxy should know this. Humanity keeps its promises, and if you are in trouble, if you are alone and afraid, send your message into the dark. The humans will hear you, and they will come. The book changed everything. Distress signals that once went unanswered now brought help. Species that had been enemies began working together. The Galactic Council, shamed by humanity's example, created new laws to protect vulnerable worlds. And humanity? They kept doing what they had always done. They answered calls for help. They stood between the innocent and the dark. They fought when they had to and showed mercy when they could. They were still dangerous, still warriors from a death world. But now the galaxy saw them for what they truly were. Heroes. Admiral Chen, now retired and teaching at the Naval Academy on Earth, kept a copy of Thessier's book on his desk. Students would ask him about it sometimes. About the battle. About the thousands who died. About whether it was worth it. He always gave them the same answer. We're human. We heard someone calling for help. That's all the reason we needed. That's all the reason we'll ever need. And somewhere in the deep dark between stars another distress signal traveled through space. Another desperate plea from another dying world. Another call into the void, hoping someone would hear. On a human warship patrolling the frontier, alarms sounded. Sensors picked up the transmission. The captain read it, then looked at her crew. They looked back, waiting for orders. The captain smiled. It was a tired smile, but determined. Set course. Maximum speed. Someone needs help. The crew moved to obey. The ship turned toward the distress signal and accelerated.